My name is Mesro Coleshill. I've been in Zoe's class since 2017. I believe that the written story is very important to the human experience because it gives people a space to be able to talk about the things that are troubling them, or things that they're thinking about, or things that they're passionate about.
My name is Anna Wafi Fonua. I feel like it's important to write because it's good to hear others be vocal of what they got on the inside, because we can see the outside of them, but we can't read their minds unless they speak and be vocal about it.
So next up, I'd like to introduce Raheem. He likes to write poetry, short stories, and memoirs. We share a lot in common. I met him here at San Quentin. I hope you enjoy his story.
As a fellow writer explained earlier, when we came up with this concept, there was definitely a sense of urgency to explore this power dynamic between prison guards and the incarcerated. And what came to mind was this idea of, will it end up being another Lord of the Flies scenario, or will a deeper sense of humanity prevail at the end of the day? And although this is very much a fictionalized story, there are definitely elements of truth and tiny nuggets of reality within these lines, if you are able to read between the lines. I'll say that. With that being said, an innocent monster. It's been a week now since the crash. Already the men here are referring to this place as the island of the damned. But I'm reluctant to agree because there are no 9 o'clock lockups, waist chains, and escorts everywhere I go. Mind you, I could do without the humidity and mosquitoes, but for the first 26 years, I've gazed up at the stars without a prison tower in sight. They were as bright as I'd ever seen them before, moving me to tears. It didn't matter that I was trapped here because the moment demanded a brief celebration of being free. There's only a handful of officers who survived the crash. We buried the rest a few days ago. Most were burned beyond recognition. Their badges, which reflected the noon sun, clung desperately to what was left of their uniforms. With each pile of dirt covering their remains, the repulsive stench drifted in the humid air, attracting carnivorous beasts and hungry birds. We were lucky, at least that was the sentiment for some who had huddled around small midnight fires. For the others, it wasn't a matter of luck at all. But when the search crews would eventually find us, hitting the reset button of dejection all over again. Camp is set up near the crash site, making it easy to forage for supplies. This morning, in the midst of the rubble, 2 pepper spray canisters sat next to some luggage. The burned handles had more than likely made them unuseful. These were the same canisters that scorched our faces during riots and mutual combats. Milo, who was seated next to me during the crash, noticed them too. "We ought to get those damn canisters before the pigs find them," he said, while tightening the sling on his right arm. "You mean find a way to use them on us?" I replied. We stared intensely at one another for a moment. Then reality tapped me on the shoulder. We were still prisoners, property of the state, and our lives, once captured, were destined for someone's foreign chamber, a remote cage in hell. "I'm gonna do it," Milo said, his face more serious than before. I shook my head as to say no. Castro, a young Hispanic guard who patrolled the crash site, soon approached. His missing sleeve exposed a faded U.S. Marine Corps tattoo. Being that Milo was a Cuban immigrant, he equated the name with Fidel, whom he hated. Without hesitating, Milo weighed his way to the rubble, retrieving the pepper spray canisters. "You need to put those down right now," Castro yelled, clutching his short steel baton. A sinister grin emerged from Milo's face. "And if I don't?" Castro charged without another warning, welcoming the challenge. Sharp thuds and grunts ensued, and the sound of heavy blows meeting flesh attracted a quick crowd. "Kill him, Milo!" an onlooker shouted with toxic rage. Others repeated the chant. feeding the insanity of the crowd. With no sense of urgency, a sharp iron rod appeared from the sling on Milo's right arm. Castro was unaware of Milo's murderous rage when it came to sharp objects. There was only one way this could end. It wouldn't be a tie or a rematch. This cruel arena would have but one winner, and the trophy was the blood and last breath of his opponent. The fear on Castro's face grew and encouraged Milo's aggression. "You're mine, you're all mine," he said, moving in a slow circular motion. Suddenly, Milo lunged with the rod, gashing Castro's left shoulder. A missing patch on his uniform quickly appeared, followed by a small bloodstain. He lunged wildly once more. Castro blocked it with his baton, but tripped over a piece of wreckage. Milo grinned once more, pouncing on this misfortune. Now pinned to the ground by Milo, the iron rod stood out like a lightning bolt against the island's green forest. Kill him now, the crowd shouted, like fans reliving a moment in the Roman Colosseum. I didn't really know Castro, but I imagined for a moment that this wasn't how he intended to die. At the hands of men who would eventually be put to death if captured. Before the final blow descended upon Castro, a voice in my head said, "No." I leaped into the circle and grabbed his arm. "What are you doing?" he shouted. "Saving you," I said, "from the monster." From the monster he imagines all of us to be, even if we're not. Frustrated, Milo dropped the rod. I never bothered to tell him that I'm an innocent man on California's death row, that I waited my entire life to prove this. But for me and many others, that day may never come. Nevertheless, I proved that years on death row couldn't turn me into a monster, nor the madmen on this island. Today, I won, without a trophy of blood or death. As for tomorrow, well, that's another story. Thank you. Thank you. So, our next writer is a mentor, fabulous guy who's always willing to help others and is always willing to give people a little bit of his time whenever you can catch him in passing. I welcome Todd Winkler to the stage. Nice.
Morning, everyone. Special thank you to our outside guests. Thank you for coming to prison today. It's not the normal flow of traffic. It feels good to be seen as an inmate. It feels good to be heard. And also, I'll say to you, good luck when you go to leave later today, but most of you will have no problem. Look, as long as your social media posts don't mention any banned books, you should be fine. I also want to extend a special thank you to Zoe, our facilitator. Zoe gives us her very best every week, and we really appreciate it, Zoe. Thank you so much. Regarding the story that I prepared for this morning, when I first read the story prompt about the downed Con Air flight, I imagined this epic battle for supremacy between inmates and guards, kind of like Raheem mentioned, a Lord of the Flies type of story, and what kind of interesting alliances might come out of that and twists and turns. Then I thought about how the public might respond to that kind of a epic battle going on. Who would cheer for the inmates? Who would cheer for the guards? And does that actually say anything about society? So I turned the lens around with my story and wrote a social commentary wrapped in a political satire. This is called The Menu. I like to write uplifting stories. Maybe that's because my kids read this column, or maybe because I'm from Minnesota. Oh, you betcha. But today I write about darkness because America's at war, a culture war to define who's in and who's out, a new civil war, not unlike our first. This conflict began as a war of words, a simple virus, but it's become a flesh-eating bacteria since the trial of the Supper Club 6, the 6 prison guards who were accused of murdering 13 inmates. In the wake of their acquittals, our politics has swerved hard right, straight into crazy town, where Fox News runs the pie-throwing city council, and Marjorie Taylor Greene is a wacky real housewife who got elected mayor. It would be hilarious if it weren't so terrifying. Let's retrace how we got here. The Supper Club 6 was the trial of the century. It had everything: government secrets, notorious criminals, a volcanic eruption, an air disaster, and, of course, cannibalism. It was Watergate, Charles Manson, Mount St. Helens, 9/11, and the Donner Party, all served up on a giant smorgasbord. It was a Thanksgiving meal of a story, and America gorged on gavel-to-gavel TV coverage, loosening our moral gut, belt notch by belt notch, until we wanted to throw up. But we couldn't push ourselves away from this macabre must-see TV. In case you're one of the 37 people who didn't watch the trial, here's a quick recap. A secret flight bound for Guantanamo Bay was carrying 13 infamous inmates and 6 prison guards when it disappeared in a plume of volcanic ash. The government operatives behind the clandestine mission secretly hoped for no survivors, so they intentionally misdirected search efforts. But 3 months later, using public satellite imagery, amateur sleuths spotted what appeared to be survivors on a small uncharted island near the Dry Tortugas in the Straits of Florida. When U.S. Navy rescuers arrived, they found a crude stockade on the beach and numerous skeletal remains. Notably, those remains were devoid of any rotting flesh, just bare bones with teeth marks. Nearby, a barbecue pit was found, along with a fermentation setup to make grog from the island's bountiful bananas. Moving inland, rescuers soon discovered the 6 guards. They were quite inebriated and combative, but otherwise in remarkably good health. When interviewed about the fate of the inmates, the guards eventually confessed to eating them, but they claimed this was purely a desperate act of survival. Further investigation revealed, however, that the guards had each gained an average of 27 pounds during their 3-month ordeal. Federal murder charges were then filed, since the island lies just within U.S. territorial waters. At trial, prosecutors dismantled the guards' would-be heroic tale of survival. For example, in one cross-examination about the island's wild pigs, the defendant could only respond that the hogs were too gamey, not to his liking. The prosecutor just shook his head and smirked at the jury with a toothpick between his lips. Saturday Night Live parodied the defendants as Marvel superheroes battling obesity and the guardians of gluttony. But despite what court watchers assumed was a slam dunk case, the MAGA hat-wearing Florida jury quickly acquitted the defendants. It was a modern-day renewal of the Rodney King verdict, reasserting an old colonial attitude that second-class humans shouldn't get first-class human rights. And once that quietly held belief was said out loud from a jury box, the right-wing media started shouting it on cable TV. Fox News host Sean Hannity dog-whistled his hungry hounds, saying, "We have thousands of incarcerated criminals on one hand and thousands of starving children on the other. Does anyone see a connection here?" One exonerated guard leveraged his newfound fame into a primetime cable news show. "They Taste Like Chicken" now airs weeknights with host Chuy Gonzalez. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis tossed red meat to his base with a cookbook titled "Smoke the Woke: How to Cook the Liberals." Not to be outdone, Texas Governor Greg Abbott is promoting Catch, Kill, and Consume, a new bill to sanction hunting licenses for vigilantes patrolling the southern border. And lastly, Donald Trump is promoting his victimhood with a spicy new slogan, "Eat them before they eat you." And if you don't know who them are, then you're on the menu. So that's where we are, folks. Crazy town. It seems that the civilized part of our civil society was just a thin facade, an eggshell around a growing beast. Maybe old Thomas Hobbes was correct when he claimed that mankind's true nature is nasty and brutish. Or maybe, just maybe, we can quiet this present-day beastliness and put our Humpty Dumpty society back together again. We could start by practicing a lesson we teach our 2-year-olds. Use your words, not your teeth. And now for all you naughty conservatives in the audience, that probably whetted your appetite, so we're going to have snack break.